Hello and welcome. In this video we're going to be talking about trend cities, what defines them, and we're going to give you some examples of some you may know.
What defines a trend city? A trend city is defined by the people. Most trend cities have large metropolitan areas with many polysocial groups of people that can be influential by the interworld. A city may become trendy because the amount of trends that begins there. Because of this, cities with large population tend to be trendy. We will now discuss about examples of trend cities. London.
A good example of a trend city is Paris. There is no doubt that Paris is one of the trendy cities there is. France and Paris have played an important role in literature and in movies. In 1950, Paris became a popular place for many American artists. The cafes became the meeting place for intellectuals from all over the world. In the bars and cafes, philosophers and writers, actors and musicians met. Through most of the 20th century, Paris was regarded as the global center of fashion, fragrance, and food. One of the best-known types of clothing to come out of Paris was the bikini. It was invented in 1946 by the French engineer and fashion designer Louis Reed. Paris has been also the place where very important international exhibitions take place. The city appeals for designers and artists, manufacturers, and enterprises from all over the world.
London is one of the largest European cities, and like a big European metropolis, is also major art center. Many people are in theaters, movies, and television business living in London. London has also a huge influence on global style and taste, and yet London's trend creators and trendsetters have not been professional fashion designers to the same extent as Paris. But in London, trendsetter has often been about young people create street fashion. London had a thriving yacht music culture after World War II. English yacht culture really caught the world's attention. The modernist styles, also known as mod style, was partly inspired by the existentialists. From Pink Floyd to the Beatles, their music and styles become popular in many different countries. In England, the mood movement was also the begins that become now as swinging in London. In the mid of 16th, choose to dress in a raw, aggressive working class or spirited class because now as skinhead and so many styles original after that and become influential through the interworld. In Europe, Great Britain is known for having low taxes, which has attracted a huge number of wealthy and industrial people from the country.
Another good example of a trend city is Milan. Milan is the most important city of northern Italy and one of the most innovative cultures producing consumer goods. Milan is also home to many of Italy's industrial and creative people. It has the most creative people per capita in a big city in the world. Architecture, furniture, and interior design are among the main features that represent the city. Milan is also the home base to Giorgio Armani, Versace, Dolce & Gabbana, and many other famous Italian fashion designers. In Italy, there are more designer stores than in any other country, and Italians buy more designer brands than any other consumer in the world. Even Italian children often dress in designer clothing. Some say that Milan is considered the world design capital.
For most of the 20th century, New York City was the world's most important culture center in art, musical theater, ballet, music, fashion, food, advertising, and many other areas. New York is the most influential city in the world. Many even consider it the capital of the world and is also the capital fashion of United States. The music industry of United States is the most influential all around the world, and many of the different existing styles either original become popular in New York City. New York City possesses an enormous number of museums, galleries, and libraries dedicated to progressive and show world history, but also constantly showcasing new emerging artists and designers applied of creating the art and trends for future generations.
Los Angeles is the birthplace of the film industry as we know it. It is centrally the center of America's movie and television industry. No other city in the world has so many directors, screenwriters, designers, and performing artists. Los Angeles is home to Hollywood studios, fine arts, and Getty Center, graffiti parks, and high-end shops of Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills. It's the second most popular urban agglomerate in the United States. Certainly the right mix of things that makes a trendy city. For decades, surfing was the epitome of California lifestyle and one of the most popular sports in the world. Los Angeles is also the birthplace to many subcultures, such as bikers. Bikers started as soldiers who felt restless after having been discharged and couldn't adapt to the civilian lifestyle.
San Francisco, the largest yacht culture of 20th centuries, emerged in north of California. They become known as hippies because they were hip. The hippie movement started in the 15th. It starts when a small group of young writers, artists, and jazz musicians settling in San Francisco, questioning the authority, using drugs, and living experimental lifestyles, and leaning towards Eastern philosophy. It later transformed into mass young movement. Silicon Valley in San Francisco plays a major part of development of new technology for electronic media. Nowhere else part of the planet is the greatest concentration of companies in the information technologies. Northern California is home of the large part of the American wine industry. It was here that the American wine way began of mid of 16th in San Francisco. And San Francisco is also home of the gay rights movement.
And what do all these cities have in common? Besides being the trendy cities they are, all these cities have a large population, which in the first place makes them more susceptible to becoming trend cities. These cities' economies are of utmost importance to their respective country. Most of them tend to be pioneers in the development of new technologies. All these cities have a cultural influence over other countries and the world. Most other countries and cities tend to imitate them either by choice or because of external pressure. Another thing that these cities have in common is their media exposure. Trend cities tend to be famous regardless of the reasons. Most people know them, either by movies, news, and other media outputs. Thank you for watching this video. We hope you learned something new about trend cities. Goodbye.